Welcome everyone to the 27th USENIX Security Symposium. I'm Will Enck.
And I'm Adrienne Porterfelt. Welcome everyone. This is a very exciting year. We have broken 2 records for USENIX security. The first is that we have 100 papers, which is the largest number of papers. So thank you to all of the authors for making this happen. And second, it is the largest number of attendees ever for USENIX security, with 785 plus attendees. We actually sold out, which is awesome. So thank you all for being here. This is, again, the biggest since 1999 when there were 717 people. So thank you all for coming. Now, I actually first attended USENIX security back in 2006, which was apparently 12 years ago somehow, when it was in Vancouver. And I still regularly keep in touch with, I've co-authored papers with people who I met there in Vancouver at USENIX security for the first time. So I want to encourage everyone here to make the most of the networking opportunities that we have, opportunities for community engagement. Since really one of the major things, aside from the excellent technical program, is meeting other people. So today we have a career luncheon for students and recent grads. If you're interested, hopefully you've already RSVP'd, but if not, there might still be some room for other people who show up. We have a symposium reception this evening. We have a community meeting with the steering committee later this evening as well. And actually, we'll talk a little bit more about why we're having that meeting later. And we're also having lightning talks this evening. Tomorrow we have a symposium luncheon, as well as the poster session and happy hour. We also have an opportunity for Birds of a Feather sessions if you're interested in organizing and attending one. These are self-organized, so check the board by the registration desk or look at the online schedule to see what Birds of a Feather sessions have been organized, or host your own. Also, if you're using Twitter or other social media, you can tag your stuff with the hashtag USEC18.
Speaking of community, the symposium is not possible without the really hard work of a lot of people, and we'll just take a moment to thank them. Starting off, thanking the program committee. You can't read these names because there are 86 individuals on the program committee this year. This is needed. This sheer size is needed for the sheer number of papers, over 500 papers submitted to the conference. So if you're in the program committee, if you could please stand up. Thank you. There's also a lot of work that goes into the rest of the venue. We have a great invited talks program for you, including an excellent keynote speaker coming up here in a few minutes. We also have a lightning talk session tonight and poster session tomorrow, and those take a lot of organization to put together. A lot of this is driven by the steering committee of USENIX that keeps continuity from year to year in the conference and has future direction for it. A big thank goes to Yoshi Kono, who acted as the steering committee liaison for us, who we use as a sounding board continuously throughout the process. The USENIX staff and board are instrumental. Particularly, I want to give a shout out to Casey and Michelle, who make this task as program chairs as simple as possible. Adrienne and I just have to focus on what are the papers going to be, and they just take care of everything else. So thank you, Casey and Michelle. We have a number of sponsors that make this venue possible. In addition to providing the general support for the conference itself, we also have additional sponsors for student diversity grants, which brings in new ideas and new people in our community that we're going to be setting the tone and the directions for the future. And without having new students and diversity coming in, we wouldn't have a broad, bright future for the symposium. So a big thanks to bringing these new minds in. And lastly, thank you everyone who submitted papers. I know not all the papers can be accepted, but without papers submitted, we don't have a conference. We had a lot of external reviewers. Many of them came in a pinch for us. We also thank all of you for coming because, again, if no one shows up for a conference, what's the point of having the conference? So round of applause for everyone who's here. Thank you.
Now, USENIX has a solid reputation for having an outstanding technical program. And the key to that strength is that we have a fair and a thorough review process. And there have been some challenges, and there are some exciting new changes coming up that relate to the review process, and I'm now going to take a moment to talk about. Now, we had 524 submissions, which is awesome. Thank you all for submitting so many wonderful papers. Now, this is great, right? It means that our community is growing. But on the other hand, this also presents some challenges with scaling. We needed an 86-member program committee, and I'm also really glad that there are two of us as chairs to share that role. But again, this is both exciting and difficult. So one of the things we did to handle the scale was set up a review task force. What this meant was that we invited 5 senior members from the program committee to give feedback on feedback, meaning their role was to review the reviews. So they were assigned a number of papers each in round 2. And instead of reviewing the papers, they looked over the reviews on the papers and gave feedback to other program committee members on how the reviews were written. I really thank the review task force members for doing this role, and also for the committee members for taking that feedback seriously, because I saw a significant improvement in the quality of reviews in many cases, thanks to this process. Also, it was nice to have the RTF members available during the program committee discussion to be an additional voice during discussion. We originally got this idea, I believe, from NDSS, which has tried this also recently, and it went so well that I'd like to encourage any other conference chairs or organizers to also consider this if they also have a large conference. And we have some big changes coming up, again, due to handling the scale. As you can see here, starting in 2019, USENIX security is going to move to quarterly, meaning 4 times a year submission deadlines, with a slightly different acceptance versus revision process. I encourage you to check out Patrick and Nadia's full announcements on the website. And also, we have a community meeting tonight at 7:30 p.m. to ask questions, to hear more, to understand really what this means. One advantage of this model is that if you have work for USENIX security in the fall, well, you're in luck. The first deadline will be November 15th, and the second deadline will be in February. I also want to mention that not all challenges relate to scaling. Some of them relate to diversity, specifically to the diversity of the program committee. The composition of the program committee, meaning who is on the program committee, is important for making sure that all perspectives are considered. Some of the things that Will and I looked for when assembling a program committee were geography, area of expertise, gender, race, level of seniority, and the type of institution that the person was at. Diversity on a program committee is really important because different people will bring different life experiences, will have different taste in problems, will have different thoughts on how practical something is, and may have different areas of expertise. So the composition of the program committee and who we invite sets the direction of the field. I think it's really important, as does Will, that we have a lot of voices present. This year's committee was 22% female, 29% junior, 12% industry, and 20% based outside of the US. Is this good or bad? I don't know. It's hard to put a value judgment on that. But I will say that I took a look, especially at gender, which is the easiest thing to quantify, across many of the top conferences, and saw that top conferences tend to be between 12% and 25% women. Now, this means that at 22%, USENIX security this year was on the upper range of this. However, if you think about it, this also means that there are many papers that don't have any women reviewers. I think there's a lot of work to do here, both on gender, also in terms of race, which unfortunately I don't have any numbers on, but I think obviously seems like an area we can improve on, to be honest. And not just us, the whole security community. Now, sometimes it's tempting to be a little nihilistic about this. Like, oh, it's a pipeline problem. There isn't really anything we can do. We can't really, bring more diversity to program committees. But I think that there are things that we can do, even if they don't necessarily have an impact tomorrow. The first is to hold leaders accountable. This means chairs, steering committees, boards. I would like to challenge future chairs, both of music security and other conferences, to also release the numbers that they have on the composition of their program committee so that we can have a full public and transparent discussion about this topic. The second is that we need to bring in new reviewers. It's not really diversity if we have the same handful of women faculty, the same 1 or 2 black men, the same small group of European professors invited to every program committee over and over again. First of all, that's not really diversity. And second of all, it places an unfair burden on those people to do more than their fair share of reviewing for the community. So what we need to do is we need to broaden our horizons and find new people to train, to grow, and to bring into the reviewing pool. So that might mean folks from industry, that might mean folks from government, that might mean professors from countries that maybe aren't currently engaging in USENIX security. There are many benefits to this. First of all, we bring in new people, we'll learn from their experiences, we'll hear what might be valued in practice or in their country. And as a bonus, as a side effect, I expect that we'll also see an increase in the number of underrepresented folks who are on program committees. Now, if you're an advisor, you're in a great position to have an immediate impact on this. Will actually came up with a great suggestion, which is to train all of your students to do reviews, even if they won't become faculty at top schools. This is where we can get a new group of people, even though they maybe went into industry or government, to participate in the review process. Also, if you're sitting here in the audience and you're thinking, hey, I'm qualified, I would like to be on PCs, or hey, I know someone who's qualified and they never get invited. Well, let me tell you a little bit about that process. So if you haven't reviewed at a top conference before, the way to often get started is with workshops. If you've published in a workshop before, you're interested in reviewing, contact the chairs. They'll often invite you to come back and review for that workshop. Once you've reviewed for a few workshops, you may be qualified to review for one of the top conferences. However, if you're an expert, like let's say you're an expert in cybercrime from the FBI, you're probably already qualified to review for a top conference, even if you haven't reviewed before. That's something that the chairs can help you with in terms of providing mentorship and support to understand how to review papers. So the next step, once you've established your credentials, is to talk to the chairs. Let them know that you're interested. Let them know that you're qualified. Nadia and Patrick are friendly, and they are here. They're next year's chairs. So feel free to find them during this conference and tell them that you're interested. Also, if you want to take a quick picture of this link, we'll also be sharing this link in other places. We have a form where you can submit your name and your qualifications to express interest in reviewing for USENIX security.
All right, now for some fun. So early in the review process, Adrienne and I had a conversation about whether or not your paper submission number had an impact on whether or not that paper was accepted or rejected. My upbringing is you want to register your paper on 3 p.m. the day of the conference submission so you get somewhere in the middle. My thinking is that reviewers typically, they don't do a whole lot of selection process when they review the paper. They get a pile. They start with the lowest number, go to the highest number. In the beginning, they're really grumpy. At the end, they're really exhausted. So you kind of want to be in their main focus area. Adrienne, on the other hand, said, wait, well, I like to have an early number because it's good luck to have an early number. So who's right? Well, turns out neither of us were right. It really just doesn't matter. This is one sample point. Don't take too much from this, but I'm not going to change what I do anyway from this information. But
luck can't be quantified.
Yeah. All right. Some more fun. So my first using security was in 2005. It was actually right here in Baltimore, and my advisor, Patrick McDaniel, was the chair. I remember sitting in the audience, and he had some fun with the words that were in the submissions. And he had this thing called the USENIX acceptability score, and his hypothesis was that certain words will lead you to an acceptance or rejection of your paper just by the words that you put in there. It's a hypothesis, right? So he had an equation, he had this metric. So it's basically for a given word, the fraction of papers that were accepted that had that word minus the fraction of papers that were rejected that had that word. So if, for example, you wanted to look at the word security, and these aren't real numbers from this year, if the security was in 50, so 50 to 100 accepted papers and 200 of the 424 rejected papers, you'd have a UAS of plus 2.8. All right, so how did it look in 2005? In 2005, accepted papers were really about Apache and buffers and crashing and vulnerabilities. How about 2018? 2018, we care about exploits and the web and vulnerabilities and, for some reason, CCS. So if you were going to go back and you were going to rewrite the abstract of your paper, you might put a statement like, we discovered a vulnerability in web exposed services by exploiting a class of bugs previously thought solved at CCS. How about the words you don't want to say? So in 2005, you don't want to say the word computer. Because, well, maybe it's a little too colloquial, it's too cute for a scientific conference. Don't talk about frameworks or certification or proofs or verification. In 2018, well, you can see we're quite applied as a conference. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't write papers on theory and submit them to USENIX security. This is a metric. But don't cite journals that call themselves journals. All right, so some more fun with this. Takeaway, last year's chairs don't matter anymore. So don't bother citing them. You might get some small advantage by citing the current chairs, but you're much better off just writing web exploit, web exploit, web exploit in your paper. We can say computers again, and you're actually better off saying computers than citing Tom or Engen. And then I did another analysis that wasn't using this UAS at all and just saying, well, what words were in rejected papers but not in any accepted papers? And you can see the list here. So from this, don't talk about puppies or SpaceX in your submissions. All right, so let's get serious. So for this year, we have 5 distinguished paper awards. This represents less than 1% of the papers submitted to the conference. We assembled a committee of 6 program committee members who voted on the papers that were awarded. This process was as transparent as possible. The discussion we had in the conference review system, reviewers were able to comment on the nominations, and in some cases, this heavily influenced the committee's discussion. So we're gonna call out the papers here. Given the time, we would like the authors of the papers to stand up and one author to come up here to get the plaque, and we'll do some pictures after the keynote just to keep things short. All right. So for our first distinguished paper award goes to Fear the Reaper, Characterization and Fast Detection of Card Skimmers by Nolan Scaff, Christian Peters, and Patrick Shannon. And so this paper is going to be presented today during the Security Impact in the Physical World session at 10:30 a.m. Our second distinguished paper award goes to Who Left Open the Cookie Jar? A Comprehensive Evaluation of Third-Party Cookie Policies by Gertrude Franken, Tom van Goten, and Wouter Jussen. And this is going to be also at 10:30 today, so you can make some choices in the Censorship and Web Privacy session. Our third distinguished paper award goes to NAVEX, Precise and Scalable Exploit Generation for Dynamic Web Applications by Joe Memo, Peter Set, and Venkat Krishnan.
They look very fancy.
Oops.
Congratulations.
Our fourth distinguished paper award goes to Battle for New York, a case study of applied digital threat modeling at the enterprise level by Rock Stevens, Daniel Lupka, Alyssa Mills, Colin Ahern, Patrick Sweeney, and Michelle Mazurek. And so this will be presented tomorrow during the Privacy in the Digital World session at 11 a.m. And our fifth and final distinguished paper award goes to QSIM, a practical concolic execution engine tailored for hybrid fuzzing by In-Soo Yoon, Sang-Ho Lee, Min Ju, Jin-Su Dang, and Tai-Soo Kim. And so this will be during the fuzzing exploit generation session tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Our next award, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin to introduce.
Thanks. All right, thanks. I had asked for a taller mic. All right, so I'm representing the awards committee from the steering committee for the USENIX Security Test of Time Award. Just some quick remarks about that. Here you can see our selection committee. We are tasked to select a paper from at least 10 years ago that had great impact on the community. And this year, there have been a lot of interesting things going on. We've heard a lot about security problems in computer architecture. And so this year, we've selected the following paper from USENIX 2006, Adrienne's first conference apparently. And it's called Evaluating SFI for a CISC Architecture, that's software fault isolation, by Stephen McKenna and Greg Morissette. So Stephen, would you mind coming up? So just first of all, Stephen, here's a lovely plaque for you to share with Dean Greg. A couple remarks, just especially for the students who can understand a little bit of context. We've seen so many security problems this year with things like Spectre and Meltdown and now Foreshadow. At the time of this paper, if you look back at it, it might not meet the modern standards of machine translation, rewriting instructions on the fly for better security, but it solved a really important gap at the time. Now, unlike a lot of the systems we see today, where we sacrifice security to get better performance, they actually got a 20% performance hit to have better sandboxing in their systems. And I'll also point out that for students who have their papers rejected, their paper was initially rejected in 2005, and Will, I believe it had the word proof in it. So it may have been one of those two papers you cited. And it is now one of the Test of Time Award recipients. But I would say just there's a lot of important problems to do. Take a look at the paper, and don't try to implement the same thing today, because of course we know 10 more years of material. But think about what kinds of gaps it was solving. But congratulations again, Stephen and Greg.
We've got one more award, but we're not going to tell you who gets it yet. So this is the 2018 Internet Defense Prize. It comes with a boatload of money. So you should show up at the lunch tomorrow. All right.
All right, I promise we're getting to the keynote soon. I'm very excited about it too. So first, I'd like to remind you about some upcoming conferences. Next year's Security Symposium will be held in Santa Clara in August, about a year from now, with Nadia and Patrick as chairs. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you're all there too. Also, Enigma is another USENIX conference that's related to security. It's going to be held in January. And importantly, submissions are due on Wednesday, August 22nd, so you have about a week to put together your submissions if you'd like to present there. In general, I also hope to see you at Enigma. I plan to be there.